Hi, this is Chris Kubiak with the Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania. Today I'm here at Audubon's Todd Nature Reserve in Sarver, Buffalo Township, Butler County, Pennsylvania. And this is, out of our 3 reserves, our not only oldest but our largest reserve. Todd was founded in 1942. It was W.E. Clyde Todd, who was the first curator of birds at the Carnegie Museum. This was his grandparents' property here. And it's actually really neat that this is the property that actually got him interested into ornithology. As the story goes, in the 1880s, Mr. Todd was a young man, and he was out here and noticed that there was a rare magnolia warbler actually breeding here on the property. So got him interested, and ever since that moment, he actually got into doing various things in ornithology and worked at Carnegie Museum doing a whole host of different bird expeditions and studies. So Todd here, this property was given to us by W. Clyde Todd in 1942, and we have well over 200 acres here with a number of trails to come out. And it also has a really unique type of ecosystem here. Some of the trees and some of the various types of plants you would find in the northern tier of Pennsylvania. So there's some really just fantastic views, fantastic streams and trails for you to come out and explore here at Todd Nature Reserve. So we're here at Todd, and as you can see, if you look around here, you'll see a nice sort of cathedral of our state tree, the eastern hemlock. We've got some northern red oaks mixed in here. There's some black birch and a number of other trees that you would find usually in cooler shaded areas. We've got this wonderful stream that runs through here, and we're getting here now at the end of March. We're getting close to April, of course, and the temperature is a beautiful spring day here. One of our first arriving warblers will actually start arriving here at Todd Nature Reserve, and that's the Louisiana Waterthrush. Now, don't let the name fool you. It's got nothing to do with Louisiana, nor is it a thrush. It's actually a warbler. And this bird comes all the way from the Caribbean, like Jamaica or Puerto Rico, or down into Central America, from Mexico into Costa Rica, and migrates up here and arrives usually in this part of western Pennsylvania in the first week of April. It's a really wonderful bird to hear and listen to observe, and you can come here to Todd Nature Reserve and actually hear them because they're quite common here. This is perfect habitat, and it's really pristine here. So hopefully you can hear me over the roar of the water here at Todd Nature Reserve. You can hear and see the waterfalls behind me. Wonderful feature, probably my favorite part here at Todd Nature Reserve. It's very peaceful, very relaxing. Behind me here at one time there was a dam that they used either to make iron smelting or potentially grain. Just a really peaceful, wonderful area here. And this is one of my favorite spots, not just to sit and listen, but also we get the Louisiana Waterthrush actually in this particular spot, and you can hear them in the next couple of weeks actually singing down here. So when I hear the Louisiana Waterthrush here at Todd, I know spring is here. All right, so we found a really neat thing here, evidence of what is called gall flies. It's a type of wasp, gall wasp, that will lay its egg in an oak. This is a oak gall wasp. Lays its eggs in there. The tree will get irritated and create this ball over top of the egg from the wasp, and then it will eventually sort of hatch out, and you can see where it sort of hatched out of this gall here and left to go propagate the next generation. All right, so we are now here up on the Polypody Trail here at Todd Nature Reserve. And what's really cool about this spot on the Polypody Trail is you see these really big rock outcroppings that are part of the sediment rock here that got eroded over millions of years from natural precipitation and during the ice ages, particularly when everything was melting. While the glaciers didn't come down here, they did produce a lot more precipitation that helped sort of foster some erosion here. Again, you can see this area has a lot of hemlocks, a lot of black birch, some various other types of trees that you find more in the north, but once you get to the top of the hill, you start to transition to a more warmer type forest with oaks and hickories. Why it's called Polypody is there is a special type of fern that you see right in front of us here, the Polypody Fern. It looks like a miniature Christmas fern. but you find them growing here in pretty large numbers here on these rock outcroppings. And those ones there, looks like winter maybe got them a little bit here, but you can find them here in these wonderful rocks. You can come up here and climb around and see all the unique flora and fauna that you find here at Todd Nature Reserve. All right, we're here on the Loop Trail. Wanted to point out something that's interesting here about what's known as forest succession, which means forest returning from once it was cut into a more mature forest. What you see here on my right, on your left here, is as we head down into the valley where the creek is here, this area was never really farmed. It was probably cut at one period in time for timber, for iron smelting, but it grew back pretty quickly, and it's a relatively mature forest here. When we got Todd Reserve in 1942, this area was still forested. If you look here on my left, or on your right, you'll see what we call forest succession here. So this is relatively younger forest that even into the late 1930s was still relatively open, brushier fields, or just really early returning forests. This area was farmed really up until probably the 1930s. There are rock spoil piles that you can find here where the farmers, when they cleared the forest, took all the rocks and put them here. So it's a neat feature of when this area was really deforested. And one of the great things in Pennsylvania is a lot of our forests have really returned. At the end of the 19th, early 20th century, we had lost a substantial part, at least over 80% of Pennsylvania had been cut at that point. But now we've returned through forest succession, and now Pennsylvania is roughly about 58% forested. So that's the idea of forest succession, and it really changes some of the plant components, whether you go from the areas of more older growth or the newer growth. And you can also find different types of birds and other land mammal species, as well as reptiles like box turtles and other neat things. All right, so we're here on the Warbler Trail, and I want to point out something that's really cool, a tree that probably most of you have never actually seen before, and that's the American chestnut. You may or may not be familiar with the fact that the American chestnut 120 to 130 years ago was probably one of the most common trees that could be found in Pennsylvania. In fact, probably at least 50% of the trees in western Pennsylvania was American chestnut. But starting in 1904, it was brought over unintentionally on some Asian chestnuts. It brought a fungus, which is known as the chestnut blight, that started spreading out of Brooklyn, New York, and across the entire chestnuts range in the eastern United States. And by the 1940s, wiped out roughly 4.5 billion trees. And it was a major problem to the ecosystem, because the chestnuts played a very important part for birds and mammals, and of course people too. People used to collect and eat the chestnuts. What I want to point out here is, even though this original tree died probably 120 years ago from the blight, the root system is still in the ground here. In fact, we probably can see in the ground this little indentation where the original chestnut tree was. What you can see here is from time to time the roots will throw up sprouts, and what happens is the sprouts grow until they're reinfested with the blight. And you can see this cracking here on this chestnut sapling here is the blight. It's actually the mycelium, or the, almost think of it like roots going underneath the bark and the cambium of the tree and cracking it as it expands. Eventually what will happen is, as the blight grows and cracks, it will actually girdle and kill this, this sapling here. And you can see the one behind it was one that grew relatively big. So up here on the hill, you can see this is actually another American chestnut. Interestingly enough, this one is actually healthy. As far as we could tell, it's grown quite big, quite straight. It's probably not that old either, because chestnuts were known as the perfect tree. They grew very fast, very straight. The wood is rot resistant. You can still find it in a lot of furniture and in barns around here, as well as fences. But this one, interestingly enough, seems healthy. And what they're finding, and we're not exactly sure if that's the case with this tree, but the blight itself has a blight on top of it, what's known as hypovirulence. There's actually a virus. Virus is sort of the word of today, but viruses also attack funguses and trees, and this virus is actually attacking the blight. So maybe, who knows what's going on here. This tree has gotten large enough to where the American chestnut will put out burrs, but unfortunately there's no fruits or no nuts in these, because it needs another pollinator to cross-pollinate to get actual nuts. But it is great to see that a tree that was such an important part of Pennsylvania's forest here at Todd Nature Reserve, and you can come look for yourself and see it. Very different from the Chinese chestnuts that came in later, because Chinese chestnuts don't get the blight. People still eat them, but from what I understand from old timers and reading about it, the American chestnut tasted way better. All right, our last stop here at Todd Nature Reserve. This was the former cabin here. As you can see, it was well past its life, and we took it down for safety reasons, but we left some of the structure up where we've got a roof. You can come in and sit and have a picnic lunch here and enjoy the beautiful sounds and scenes here at Todd Nature Reserve. What's cool about this was a hunting cabin built in the 1920s, late 20s, and it served as ASWP, Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania's first, in some ways, nature reserve. But we would have summer naturalists, Todd naturalists here that would basically live in the cabin during the summertime. They would do various scientific research. They do a lot of birding, look at the various plants and animals here. And a lot of really cool people have come through here as Todd naturalists as well. But it's still just a neat, I think, component to the history of the property here. And you can come up, like I said, and enjoy it anytime. So hopefully you've enjoyed these videos, and you'll check out more of our videos here for Audubon Society of Western Pennsylvania as we continue to post these. And if you'd like more information, please check out our website at aswp.org. Thank you very much.